Welcome, everybody, back to the Let's Dig Into That podcast. The podcast where we try to give you permission to be yourself. This is a celebration of your authenticity. We invite you to dig into the discomfort in pursuit of healing, growth, and meaningful connection. And who do I connect with? I connect with the big brain beauty. She'll make you say, my God, while in a tripod. It's Jordan, everybody.
Ridiculous.
That was a good one. I'm proud of that one.
I do love a good tripod. That blood flow to your head.
You tripod it like every night.
I try to.
And it is a fun way to look at you.
It is a geometric wonder.
Yeah,
It's not.
I love it.
Oh, God.
It looks sexy upside down.
I couldn't ask for a greater compliment from my Rambo of relaxation, the hubba hustler himself. Allow me to introduce JT.
Thank you, baby. That was a pretty good one.
Yeah, what are we talking about? What are we talking about today? I'm excited.
Well, tell me what goes on inside your body when you hear the word compromise.
I was like, we're going to go in combo. And I was like, get fries. So compromise.
Right.
What goes on inside my body? Tightening. I think there is a defensive turn up of like, oh, I'm about to win, which is
you gotta
not
win.
the right attitude. I would say I see how that was a really good opening question because I see where I might, struggle where I'm just, and it's not super competitive, but it's like, here's this great idea I have brought to us both. You're welcome. And so I feel like my idea is just probably better. So tightening in my body. How about you?
I asked it that way because I think it's interesting. Like when I approach a compromise, I'm not tight. I'm like, let's find the middle ground where everyone can win. I'm definitely not trying to get my way. When I hear compromise, I go, okay, how are we going to make this work for everybody?
And you don't go, oh, fun. Now we're going to do something that everybody likes less. Like we're all gonna
That's
just
what happens in your brain?
So like, and no one's gonna be happy. We're gonna ensure that everybody is moderately disappointed.
Yeah, no, that's never. My goal is definitely the glass half full approach of, okay, I think we can all be winners here. I think we can all get what we want in this situation.
Good intent is something I have in me. Again, compromise probably sends me into negotiation.
Yeah,
where
you jump straight to.
Yes.
I'm going to give you this and you're going to give me that. And I'm getting what I want.
I do enjoy that. I'm also a great giver, but in
That's
the
true.
moment I need things. It's true. I love that I'm thinking about your one football t-shirt that's like, I hope everybody just has fun. And I'm like, that nobody needs to win or lose. I'm not going to. And I think you do have a really healthy approach. You're like, this is an opportunity for me to shine.
Absolutely. A compromise, in my opinion, is an opportunity to connect. Because, like, we're going to work together here to be on the same page.
How's it going with me? Like in all seriousness, like how is that working out?
It's going great. I mean, we do struggle. I mean, the reason we're talking about this today is because our listeners were curious about how we compromise and they wanted to know what we fight about. And compromise is a better approach than just like, oh, we fight about this, because we're not trying to do a podcast where we legitimately get in a fight. However, it would be pretty good.
I'm not against it. I probably say I try to poke a little each time we chat, but it was interesting to see the variation of, and thank you listeners. Like it means so much, but yeah, there were some like, what do you guys fight about?
Yeah.
And like, yeah, who wins? How do you get over it? But then there was conflict resolution and compromise. And so I think it's a really,
well, I think compromise is particularly challenging inside the dynamics of a relationship. Just add to really challenging things. And I think that you got to kind of break up compromise because it is an overarching category of things. Because like there's compromises on who's going to take the trash out. That's a whole different thing on, hey, I got this job opportunity 5 states over and I want to do it. Let's uproot our lives. There's a different type of compromise that happens in those situations.
so we live next door to the in-laws, but we need to move 5 states away with the brood. Tricky. Yeah.
Right. And
taking out the trash different than how are we going to parent our children?
Right. Absolutely. And so is there anything in your life that you're unwilling to compromise on?
Ooh. Hopefully we all should feel that to a degree of those core inherent values but yeah, I would not feel comfortable like your own self-respect.
Well, yeah.
Or, yeah, and I would really struggle on someone if I had an opinion on something, and that's just mine and mine alone, to have to be put in a situation where I needed to let that opinion go. Like, so holding your, I think that just a little bit
I
involved
hadn't
in
thought about that.
dignity.
Kind of like politics,
Right.
like, huh, interesting.
And so we can agree not to talk about it, but compromising is I'm not going to compromise my belief system, perhaps.
Right.
But I do think we can agree on where to go to dinner.
Yeah.
But yes.
I think one of the hardest things that a lot of couples struggle with is outside factors, other people. Like when you start in a relationship, I don't think it's uncommon for one partner to ask the other to change their way that they interact with a certain person. Is that making sense?
Oh, so you've got a like a commentary. You have a new relationship and you're receiving some feedback. Oh, I love the movie Wine Country. Can I get some
Feedback.
feedback? But you're receiving feedback
Poison.
that this one friend you're hanging out with, like, man, you guys either, yeah, you're just doing things that might not be the best. Spending too much money, you guys always gossip too much, you're who the heck knows.
Or
But you've
even
got
a-
an issue with the
Or
dynamic.
maybe you're friends with your ex,
Oh, friends with your ex.
right? Friends with your ex. I think that that's something that people run into all the time. Do you think it's reasonable for a partner to ask you to not have particular people in your life?
I don't like the way that makes me feel inside. I think that
Yeah.
would be really tricky because you have chosen to. We are all capable of falling victim to a toxic friendship or family dynamic or something like that. And sometimes an outsider's like, whoa, I don't know if you've been seeing what's going on around you, but this is really icky. And so I'm sure there are times when it's positive, but I think that needs to be a pretty thoroughly communicated. Because if you were, let's use the ex as the hypothetical, if you were like,
Yeah.
hey, I would really prefer you not, like, it would be important if I'm hanging out with that person, you need to know that person to
Well-
a certain degree, where it wouldn't be like we have a secret handshake friendship, but it would be like I chose to spend a part of my life with this person. If I still, I don't have the same feelings for them, but I find it admirable when people hang on to ex relationships if they're in
Yeah.
a positive way, if that's the best for them, because it's like, yeah, we grew apart, it wasn't fun anymore, but or things did get really bad, but we still exist as people.
I like your answer there, and I don't think it's reasonable for someone to ask that. And I sort of queued up that question because that's an opportunity to compromise. If you have a relationship with someone that your partner doesn't feel like is good for you, it is not their place to tell you. And the thing that I want to bang home on compromise is you can't compromise the things that make you who you are. You know what I mean? You can give
Your
away too much.
individuality.
You can give away too much in a compromise, and it is so problematic for your individuality and your authenticity and the things that
The more you give away, the less you have to come back to, because then you have no ground to stand on because you have no agency.
Right.
You're like, do you want this or this? And you're like, kind of don't care because you're going to tell me
Anyway.
how it's going to play out anyway, because you know what's best. Hashtag patriarchy. Sorry. It just slipped out. But I think that's like compromise versus sacrifice.
Exactly. I think that if we don't do anything in this podcast, we have to help people understand. And you and I too, we learn in these things as well. When you compromise, it cannot be a sacrifice. It needs to be a path that works for everybody. And so going back to our hypothetical about an ex, the way I'd approach that is, okay, I hear what you're saying. I'm seeing how you're feeling. How about, and then two options.
Oh, yes.
If you offer more than two options in a compromise, you're setting yourself up for failure, and you offer two options. How about for the next month, every time so-and-so and I hang out, you come with us? And then after that first month, we reevaluate.
Ooh, that's really good. I like the check-in down the line, because that's a big one. If you have something that you don't have to make a choice now, never or always, and speak in those absolutes, and understand getting a job out of state is a different situation. But if you have the opportunity of, let's take a minute and both try to be more proactive and work, let's point ourselves this direction, and then a month, 6 weeks from now, 3 months from now, whatever the case might be.
Right.
Talk about it. I like
And I
that.
hope that helps sort of shift your mind, because I think a lot of people's perspective on what compromise means in general is flawed. Kind of like what you said, like, oh, about to win this negotiation. The way I really think that we could frame this is, okay, this person's coming to me with something important to them. Are they coming from a place of control? Does that person want to control you?
What are the motives?
Exactly. Figure out the motives. But if that person's coming to you with an honest concern, that's an opportunity to compromise. You know what I mean? Because you don't want someone to control that. They're looking for you to sacrifice.
So exactly, when you are presented with these two options, what an empowering chance to be like, you know what? All right, there is something I've been meaning to work in here. And so it is an opportunity. But if you lose that sense of the controlling aspect, it could be really scary when you're just
Exactly. I don't know about you, and I'll only speak from my own personal experience, but I've definitely encountered a lot of people that look at it as a compromise as an opportunity to practice manipulation.
Oh.
They're pretty close together.
I do. I think that like the scenario, if we're on the same page, that comes to mind is like, oh yeah, I'm presenting you with my options, and what you're saying is you were like, you've chosen option B. Option B still gives me what I want because I presented it, and gives you what you want a year from now. And I have no intention in giving a shit about that. Whatever I
Exactly.
promised a year from now.
Exactly right. That is exactly what I was
If
trying
we
to get
go on
to.
this vacation now, we'll go to Dollywood, wherever you want to go next. I'd go to Dollywood next time. And then before Dollywood comes up, I'm like, here's a better plan.
Right.
I think we should all do this
It is.
instead.
So, root word of compromise, what's in there?
Uh-oh.
Promise. If you are going to compromise with someone and there's a give and take here. And I love your example of this year we're going here, next year we're going where you want to go. That's a great example. If you choose not to, you've made that commitment. Promise is in the word compromise. You have to stick to what you're
through.
saying. Otherwise, you're simply manipulating someone.
Good intentions, really? Do you think that you're like, yeah, that can be a slippery one because
If you make a
because
compromise,
that bird in the hand where you're like, so what I'm hearing is you're saying yes to my want now, and so I don't need to worry about the timeline later. Ooh, manipulation, compromise,
is scary, right?
subtle little crossover there. So is there what would you not be willing to
Compromise on? Man, that's tough because for me, I've lived a weird vagabond lifestyle.
It's a good story.
And so there's not a lot of like places or things that would be non-negotiable in my world, but to stay true to myself, I know that to feel good, I need to do work that benefits other people. Service is so important to me, and so taking a job that doesn't provide service to make sure our household has enough money is a really challenging one where I run into that a lot where the field I'm in and as a social worker.
Means to an end is a really tricky when you're like, life is short. It goes against all my other
Absolutely. And so
passions and interests.
I need to be actively engaged in things that fill up my cup. And so if someone wants to compromise on the fact where maybe it's a higher paying job or something like that, where I could go work finance or whatever, something that's not my passion, I'm not willing to compromise on my passions. That's sort of what it has to stick to is I'm not willing to give away that piece of me for anything.
Good,
You know?
because that is, again, giving a little bit away and being like, oh, I'll just do it for a while.
Right.
Could easily be a slippery, pension plan, lifetime commitment.
Right. The job situation is another tricky one that I think people run into of this is what I love to do, but it's not making enough money to support our household. What are we going to do about that? That's a really challenging one.
It's big.
It is.
Yeah, very
Absolutely.
universal. But what about compromising on like how you spend your time together? Is that more of a turn-taking moment? But like hobbies, like if you don't happen to be a golfer, but that is a time commitment.
Yes.
And so, that would be, I think that's, what's a good,
I would really hope that particularly in a relationship, that's sort of what we've been discussing as far as compromise goes. I would hope that most of your things that you like to do together are shared interests. When they're not,
Complementary an opportunity there
yeah, like
where
your example of golf, I want to be a better golfer. I would love to go do that with you. But there, you want me to go see Wicked. We did that and I enjoyed it very much when I expected not to. And so that was wonderful. And so, I don't know, a lot of times that's not exactly a situation where I'm going to be stepping outside of who I am. And so I'm willing to compromise on those things because they perpetuate positivity moving forward.
yes.
Connection moving forward. Like, I don't know. That's really how I gauge a good compromise is, does this help both of us actually? Is this getting me out of my shell a little bit by giving
Is there a possibility of a win-win
there's
dual good solution?
I like to think there's always a win-win in the situation. Sometimes you find when you're actually involved in it that it's not, and you learn something. That's positive as well.
Exactly.
There's a
Spin it.
positive push. So as long as you can see like this person who's asking me to do something that I particularly wouldn't pick for myself, is there something that I can take value from? And if that's the case, I'm going to compromise.
Pausing for here are three things I've learned in this conversation. Pausing for reflection on the situation at hand
Yeah.
and really thinking active listening to what the person wants and then being able to kind of match that. But one thing I'm really not doing a great job on is the perspective flip flop. Like I am coming from a place of like I opened with of tightening and negotiation. Like I am an autonomous gonna go get him, and I don't for a second go, okay, this is how he had to come to me and present, delicately these two options. And so I think the perspective switch would be a huge benefit in mine because I am all about this is what I
putting yourself in their shoes.
yeah.
I think that's a wonderful thing to do anytime you're in a compromise and you're worried about losing a little bit of yourself. If there's a big decision on hand and you're struggling with it, taking a step back and
Sleeping on it's real.
thinking about a couple different things. Put yourself in their shoes, try to get their perspective. That's a wonderful. And then the second part of that is just being intentional is what I wanted to say there. What are their intentions? What are your intentions? Most of the time, someone looking to compromise their intent isn't bad. And I think it's really important to acknowledge what their intent is. If their intent is to control you and make sure that you don't get to be who you are, problematic, right?
Stifling, yeah.
Yeah, but there's obviously, if the intent behind the compromise is a positive one where this person wants to project you forward, why not? But
And so within this household where we're like all of our goals are these kind of near luxury and these amazing adventures we want to take. So we both agree in this situation that like our end goal is we need this savings account. And so there it is. The goal is we need this number. And so how does the service mindset or your personal individuality and your heart, how does that work into, that's going to go get us, that's going to get us there.
There's always solutions. And so if we were compromising right now and you were like, hey, we got to have this much savings to take this adventure that we both want to go on, we have a common goal. That's really a positive part for the compromise. And so then I would start thinking on my own, how can we get there? Here's two solutions for you. Because again, if you offer more than two, you're not going
We're
to
selling the dogs.
You're not going to get streamlined to the progress you're hoping to make. So I would come back to you with like, I could see patients and clients on the weekends and at nighttime to try to bolster that savings account. Or I could get a second job doing, some kind of other work. And I'd give you two options on there of like, what do you think is going to get us there the best? And then honestly, if you're in a situation where you're compromising with someone and you have a common goal, if someone offers you a compromise and gives you those two choices and you don't counter, you're not doing your due diligence. You need to think about it yourself and come back to, I like what you're doing right here. And let's work off of that. and then you present two options back until
In a
you find
perfect-
the one option where everyone's on the same path working towards that common goal. Does that make
Everybody
sense?
feels, because what are we avoiding there? Like, it's so interesting as you're like working through it. I'm like, and then they don't resent each other on vacation. And then they aren't packing the bags going, just stuffing it all in there with just so much bile, like just ick.
Yeah, resentment is exactly what we're trying to avoid. Resentment that sticks with you and stays with you from a choice that you made, but maybe it didn't feel like your choice. Oof. Like, I don't, that's a hard thing to come back from. You know what I mean? Where it takes a lot of talking and it takes a lot of more compromise that you are now more comfortable in your skin to hold on to the things that are not worth or acceptable to compromise on. And so there is a learning curve. Like, I think we've all made compromises that we regret.
Sure. Yeah.
Yeah.
Live and learn, right?
Absolutely.
But the collaboration part, like you said, you have to counter because it is, I mean, grasping, and that's asking a lot, the gift of time and positive communication. But yeah, if you are both well intentioned, there should be hope that you
Absolutely.
can get there. And so I think that, yeah, then, and that's maybe just a no brainer. But I just think about, yeah, it's really difficult to have to, yeah, if you feel like you're going toe to toe all the time.
Well, it gets really challenging, and before we compromise on the big issues, I would hope that there was conversations about them. And I know we're trying to focus on compromise, but let's talk about a life goal. Let's say you and your partner, let's say you and I have
Okay.
different, we want to be authors. That's what our goal, we share a common goal, and that's really great. Let's say we didn't. How do you navigate that situation where one person sees your entire life going one direction and the other sees their life going a different one?
Well, I even think in most, it's very, I would argue, almost less common to have two people that have that same drive path.
Yeah.
That it's more common to be like, I am crazy about this, and I love that she is wicked into that. And so I think that can be great too. So ask me again in the sense of like, if your goals are different.
Yeah, if your goals on where you see yourself in 20 years are different, what do you do about that?
Yeah. Troubling, isn't it? Yeah.
It's a big question. It's a big question that I'm asking you, and I kind of have a thought about
Yeah,
it.
please help.
Individual compromise. This is a concept that I think is extremely important where you guys can compromise, and that compromise can be, this is my thing and this is your thing, and I support you in that thing.
I've got
and
your
you
back.
support me in this thing. And that doesn't mean that your goals don't align.
Right.
You need to have some things that pull you away from each other so you can get on the same page to where you're going. And so there are certain things that you might have to compromise on, where you live, those kind of things. But as far as like, if you are not on the same page of where you want to go, you can still each have a piece of what you're hoping to achieve. And so that, what I mean by individual compromise is sometimes the compromise is, okay, I see that you want to do that and I support you in it. I'm going to do this and I would really appreciate your support in this. And let's see if that gets us to, let's say our goal is that trip, that adventure we wanted to take. Maybe that's the compromise at hand is, okay, we were going to do this together. We thought we were, but let's go different paths and try to rejoin. There's opportunity always in that.
Because in that way, it is mutual.
Yeah.
You have not lost you have maintained your sense, your identity,
Yes.
your sense of self. Because that's where I think it comes to sacrifice. So if you can't get that partner, if it's either a hard no or I'm not doing it, like that's where it becomes the, danger zone.
Exactly. And you have to sort of think about what is a reasonable compromise. And in my opinion, a compromise is never reasonable if someone's telling you how you should live. It needs to be a common goal, or we're talking about individual things. So for me to say, I don't want you doing that,
Hanging out with that person.
it's not reasonable. That is not a compromise. That is me trying to control you. And that's the aspect of compromise that I just caution people to be aware of is, what are the intentions of the person that you're having this compromise with? And don't let them control you. Do not sacrifice the things that you cannot let go. Was that a double negative there?
I'm with you. Yeah, hold on to yourself.
Exactly. Know what you're not willing to budge on and don't budge on it. And that person, your partner, should be an addition to your already awesome life. You know what I mean? And it's not always going to be like that. People fight. We have to compromise. But for the most part, your goals and aspirations should be pushed forward by your partner. And if that compromise is taking away from your
That
individual
shush.
plan, man,
You got a situation.
that's a situation that
Speaking of our fighting, so I think one of the biggest compromises is how we are still working to finesse, because I need a moment to collect my sanity sometimes.
when we fight.
Sometimes
Yes.
if I get turned up, I'm just like, it's just white hot rage. And I'm just tweaked at that moment. And I will say things if poked and prodded that I can't take back, and that will be things that I don't necessarily feel, but I do I want to hurt you more. Like I say things that are, and that's not a good look. And
wanna
so
stick
I need
me.
a breather, and there is nothing you hate more. And I know it's come up here and again, but that is our freaking struggle.
It is our struggle. Yes.
I want to crawl into him and be like, just stop. If you give me 30 minutes, perhaps, of just like, because it does. Anger dissipates. It is a chemical release in the body, getting yourself together. Because I do think about, am I going to give half a hoot about this in 15 years? Is this worth going like this just nasty about? And it usually isn't.
Right.
And so I would argue that, you turn up. I feel like you instigate. And you
That I instigate because I don't give you the space. Is that what you mean?
I think you just might be the instigator, and then I see my white hot rage, and then you just want to follow me and nip at it. That's
A
what
lot
I
of
feel.
a lot of times
How can we compromise on that?
where good question. I'll start there. I'll start with your answer. What we could do a better job of is having those check-ins. You already brought it in, and I think it's an important concept of like whether it's short term or long term. That's important.
End of the day, end of the
If
week.
you were like, hey, I'm turnt and I need 60 minutes, I guarantee you I could respect that. When there isn't a time frame on the table and you haven't thrown it out there, your space that you need to calm down for me is it could be a minute. I have no idea how much time you need. And so a lot of times when I come back to try to resolve the issue, there's been a miscommunication in the language we use. That's probably the most common thing, where I said something I didn't realize was insensitive,
And I react like a hyena.
and you walk away, and I want to follow you and be like, hey, I did not mean.
I have this face that is like, you have to be kidding.
I did not mean it the way that I think you're understanding it. And I would like to clear
Crazy
the air
eyes.
right now, as opposed to 30 minutes when you've sat with something that I didn't mean. And so that's why I feel like there's urgency.
And then I
behind it.
feel that he finds me and tries to mansplain, not something I often use. And I feel like he's coming out. I'm going to drive home that point. So I am not receptive to anything you're putting down. And I feel like any healing or cooling off I've done, I'm like, oh, got to start all over. Set me back.
So what if we did this? Next time we're in an argument, what if I did one of these two things? What if I asked you how long you'd like me to give you some space? Secondly, what if I just walk the dogs? And when I come back, we chat. Which of those do you think would be, do you like either of those options?
I see what you're doing here. It's happening, guys. It's happening. I do like that. I think the dog walk is a great idea because it's wonderful for everybody involved. And should I need an extra few, I can find a spot and leave a note that says I need 15.
Okay.
And so it does. Because for me, it is, I need you to disappear from throwing distance. Not just sight. If I could chuck something at you. And so, yeah, I think that would be great. Because I respect the fact that you're like, I hate this. This sucks.
I want
We're in
this
a
over
shitty
right
moment,
now.
and I want it freaking over. So I'm on board with the mentality. But as much as I know we've come a long way, and there was a little bit of explanation, and how are you just brushing this under the rug? And I'm like, by taking this little pause in time and I'm going, oh no, all that's coming back up. And I wasn't trying to do that in a devious way, but in a, we're going to talk about it, but we're going to talk about it when there's not smoke trickling, you know?
I get that, and I understand it, but I don't feel it. Like, the way that I function is like with more time.
That's why people have safe words.
Yeah, I sit there and it runs through my head a million times, and I don't calm down. I get worse, and that's, I'm an anxious guy, and that's what happens to me. And so the compromise there, great job, by the way.
Thank you.
We just did it. We role modeled.
I'll report back on how the dogs are doing.
Well, and good job, because you didn't just say yes to one of my things, because they were both good options, and I tried to make it that way. But you said what you needed is, yeah, the dog walk thing, I like that. But when you come back,
reserve the right to take an extra few.
Absolutely. Look for a note, because if I'm not ready yet, there's your key.
Because it is in your best interest that I have a moment. It's in everyone's best interest. But I do want to honor the fact that I'm not trying to screw with you, because it would be tempting to be like, oh, this'll get him. I'm going to win this because he's going to turn to dust. If I start my car and pretend to drive away, like that would just be, that's...
You don't do that?
I don't pretend. No, if I usually notify you and I'm out. And so I think that was really good. It is like parenting. It's really smart. Give them two options.
Two options. If you give more than two options, it just gets complicated. One other question I had on compromise. I think it's important that sometimes you get outside feedback, but I also think it's
outsourcing. Good call.
I also think it's pretty dangerous. What are your thoughts on?
Oh, because it is true that, okay, I'm presented with, he got a great job states away. Right. I know exactly what answer I would get from my phone tree of love and support. The ones that, you live next door to, like, you're out of your mind, he's crazy, and let me give you the 20 reasons why, and you're never doing this. And so it's why couples counselors exist, right? Why
That's
that
exactly
neutral
right.
third party can be so awesome. Like, if everybody can have their own therapy opinion, I love having a ref. Like, that can be wonderful to have somebody.
What's the marriage advice that we got?
Get a counselor.
Counselor on speed dial,
have somebody that knows your vibe, your tone before shit is sideways.
The neutral third party is important, but there's not a lot of neutral third parties in anyone's life. And I think it's important to be cautious on who you're throwing, hey, this is the compromise that we put in place, and I was given this much time to think about it, and I really don't know how to feel. If you approach someone, like most of my friends, I love all my friends, they're amazing, but
great listeners.
They're great listeners. They're going to feel like it's overstepping.
They wouldn't want to
offer their opinion about my life and my relationship. And so I know that their feedback is going to be in my favor or muted. Mm-hmm. And if you have a great friend that tells you how it is and doesn't, sugarcoat shit,
lucky
you. That's amazing. And I would highly encourage getting that person's feedback. But if you don't have someone in your life, and evaluate these people, truly,
and
who do I want to talk to about this?
If you're in a tricky word, but compromised situation with that, I don't know what I'm feeling a little weaker on my own, where I stand, that's you might surround yourself with this controlling people that are going to help compromise for you, decide for you, lead. But for those kind of in the middle that are struggling with all right, I was presented with two options, my turn to negotiate and come back. That is a great friend moment of if you have that gift of time to mull on some things, and let's chat about it tomorrow over dinner or when we walk the dogs or whatever it might be, and where your friends or family members could say, that doesn't really sound like, they may be able to remind you of that authenticity. Absolutely. Or encourage and say oh my gosh, don't you remember that so-and-so lives out there or whatever. That'll give you such a great opportunity to collect those seashells you've been meaning to.
And it's much different than my mom says I'm right and you're wrong. You know what I mean? It's a dangerous thing. And so if I were to give professional advice on that, if someone asked me that, hey, give me your professional advice on whether I should run these things by my friends, I would say a professional is probably the best way to go. Because it's really hard to find that neutral third party.
And what are you looking for? Like a ballot count total, because you're going to be so confused in your precious little mind if you go, all right, I don't really know what I want, I'm going to ask these 12 people. That's not going to help.
Well,
And
a professional counselor is trained in helping you
guide you back to
figure
you.
out your decisions.
Yeah.
Where a friend might be a little biased,
self-motivating and like, I
Exactly.
want you, yeah.
and they also might be their perspective. I love that you brought up perspective. Going to a friend with a compromise that you're faced with to get some feedback, very, very powerful. But again, they might have a different perception of who you were as opposed to who you are now.
Yeah.
You know, like
excellent
most of my
point.
friends I've had for my entire life. You know, my best buddy, we did kindergarten through college together. He might have a different perspective of the person I want to be than the person I actually want to
Than
be
who you are in this
moment. And
in
so,
this relationship.
man, I do really think that a professional is the right way to go. And I just want to say to all the couples out there, couples counseling does not mean you're faced with a huge problem. It is maintenance. It is
true.
not something
we don't
you should...
get any kickbacks, but we are both big fans, and we both have had awful, horrendous experiences. I shouldn't speak for you two. I can attest to, that could not have gone worse.
Yes.
And everybody agreed. And so it is risky, but it is amazing because I am so much more responsive to that person delivering what you might say in the same way, but having it is
Right.
framed where I'm going. That makes so much more, because there's so many other variables that are when I can't look at it in black and white, and that is really helpful. And so, yeah,
Absolutely.
no plugs, but I do kind of, it's nice to have somebody in your corner.
Very
Shout out June. Thank you so much, I think. But perspective, I need to be a more active listener, because usually if you say yes to what I want, I just go, okay, and agree. And
Yeah.
then I'm not going to hold myself to the promises I made when the time comes to deliver.
I thought you brought some great points with put yourself in their shoes and think about what their intentions are when you're faced with a compromise. 2 choices only. That's a big one. And don't give anything away that you're not willing to.
It's not worth it if you can avoid it. It's hard as hell to get back if you're lucky enough to do so.
Absolutely.
Yeah. Oof.
Well,
be brave, beautiful friends. That's what, be
absolutely.
brave.
Great combo. I'm
Thanks for chatting
JT.
with me, and I'm Jordan. Until next time.